Welcome to a very special segment of Dialogue on Public Issues. I'm John Chowning with Campbellsville University, welcoming back a guest who has been with us numerous times through the years, our Kentucky Commissioner of Agriculture, Ryan Quarles. Welcome, Commissioner.
Glad to be back. I know things are a little bit different, but glad to join you today, even if it's from a distance.
Well, we certainly appreciate your taking time, and these virtual interviews are a little bit different. There may be a slight time lag, but we do appreciate your taking time to be with us today. I know it's a busy time for you. Certainly during the COVID-19 pandemic has shaped the first 6 months of your second term. Tell us how some of the things that you have been undertaking during the past 6 months, and particularly since COVID-19 hit us so hard.
You know, COVID-19 is first and foremost a very serious public health concern.
Yes.
Our frontline workers and our medical staff are keeping us safe, but as your Commissioner of Agriculture, I'm committed to keeping Kentucky fed. And so the first couple months of 2020 were business as usual. We had the very first law signed into law by the governor and through our General Assembly was an agriculture bill. We had about eight pieces of legislation that we were able to shuffle through and guide through the General Assembly legislative process. But as you know, towards the beginning of March, everything changed. And we, on day one, fought for a waiver to be immune and exempt from the executive orders. We acted very quickly to make sure that agriculture was one of those businesses that's recognized as critical infrastructure. And this is for obvious reasons. People need to eat. But a second reason is that, as we know, but oftentimes we have to remind consumers, is that agriculture and farming revolves around seasons, not arbitrary calendar dates. And so it's so important that we had a clear exemption so that our farm community and the agribusinesses that support farmers stayed open for business as long as they were in compliance with CDC guidelines. And so this included everyone from obviously the farm level up, but it also included our livestock yards, which were so critically important to keep open. We're a big livestock state, and a tremendous amount of livestock, particularly cattle, are moved and sold during the spring months to prepare for planting season. And so that was step number one, making sure that we had clear guidance to make sure that our farm community was able to be open for business. Number two, as schools shut down and transitioned to learning at home, we wanted to make sure that Kentucky families knew that their kids had access to free and reduced lunch, even if they're learning at home. And we actually were one of the first states in the nation to get a waiver from the USDA to allow us to provide curbside pickup or drop off using school buses. And so I know in rural Kentucky, school buses literally transitioned from picking up and dropping off students to dropping off food as well. And we had to do a tremendous amount of paperwork, but Kentucky is one of the first states out the gate to be able to do that. And over the past couple months, as we went through April and May and now June, it's about making sure that agriculture stays open for business, but we're also setting an example since we never really shut down about how businesses can conduct themselves as they reopen. And my hat's off to our farm community, as they've been a pleasure to work with. I think most folks recognize the seriousness of this disease, but at the same time, I think it's time for our state to open up, and we can do it in a responsible way. That if our big box stores can conduct business, I think Main Street, Kentucky, and certainly agriculture can do it as well. And then most recently, we got some great news that I think Kentucky needs something to look forward to, and that's the Kentucky State Fair. And we just got it approved from the governor's office and from the State Fair Committee, which I serve on. But let me be very clear right now that the state fair that you're going to see in 2020 will not look like any previous state fair, as we are taking the social distancing guidelines very seriously. And we also have a lot more questions we have answers for right now. So please give us a little patience. But we will have a modified state fair later in August.
Tell us about that, your role in helping encourage the state fair being held and scheduled, and how it will be different. And that really is a big victory for Kentucky agriculture as well as the state as a whole. That is a major event for the year.
You know, the Kentucky State Fair easily ranks as one of the top 5 state fairs in America. On a typical year, we'll have 600,000 people enter our fair gates. And it's a celebration of everything agriculture. And for farm families like mine, but also people who may not have farming background, it's a great place to come learn a little bit more about our rural roots and celebrate agriculture in big ways. For 2020, some big changes. And first and foremost, I advocated for a state fair that honors our traditional fair roots, and that is livestock showing as well as some other agriculture-based activities. And we have 93 county fairs in Kentucky, about half of which have been canceled at this point. And so for a lot of young children, 4-Hers and FFAers who spend all that time and, let's be honest, money to prepare for a livestock show, they've had no opportunity to participate so far this year. And so we wanted to make sure that we had a livestock show so that any Kentucky kid that wants to come that qualifies can be there. And one of the first things we did is that we changed the rules of the state fair, that you don't have to win a qualifying event to come. We have 700 acres of prime real estate in downtown Louisville. There's plenty of space to spread out. Now, just a few logistical issues. We know that our crowd size must be dramatically reduced, and I think everyone is clear on that. And there's going to be certain segments of the population that say thanks, but no thanks. I just don't think I'm going to attend this year, and that's perfectly fine. The 2020 State Fair is basically going to be 4 separate components. Number 1 is livestock showing. Number 2 will be an outdoor concert series, which we're still working on. Number 3 will be a midway with some rides, and we're working with our fair operators to make sure that we have safety protocols and disinfecting protocols in place, and they've been very cooperative to work with. And then lastly, the World Championship Horse Show. There's going to be a lot of restricted access. You know, in years past, you could walk in and out of the buildings as a visitor or as an exhibitor. This year, we're going to have a lot of restricted access on the inside just for exhibitors. And so this is going to be more of an outdoor event. Now, we know this is going to be a lot to handle. There's still, again, a lot of parts of the plan that we're working on. So please be patient with us and stay up to tune with the State Fair Board, as we have some new members as well recently appointed. But we want to set the example just a couple weeks before the Kentucky Derby, which will be held in Louisville too. So I think if we can do it responsibly at the State Fair, so can the Kentucky Derby.
2 major back-to-back events that are highlights of the year for Kentucky. Very important, I think, for us to celebrate those. Will the dates of the fair be about the same as originally scheduled?
Yes, the dates will be the same. It's usually the 2nd and 3rd weeks of August. We're going to keep those dates. So just please stay tuned, and we'll be sure to have information out about that. And while we're on the topic, just real quickly, we have a one-stop portal for everything agriculture and COVID issues in Kentucky. It's just go to our website. It's kyagr.com/COVID, and that can give you a list of events that are still on, events of lists that are canceled or postponed as well. And for example, we had some livestock shows which were postponed earlier this year that we're going to keep on the schedule. We had to change the date. So please encourage your viewers to check out our website.
During your first 4 years in office, one of the areas that you became involved in was in the area of hunger initiatives and dealing with growing food insecurity among Kentuckians, something of a leader among your counterparts around the country. And that has expanded, I think, during COVID-19, during the last 3 months. Tell us about some of the work that you've been spending a fair amount of your time over the last 3 or 4 months on.
4 years ago this month, we started the Kentucky Hunger Initiative, a first of its kind effort to connect our generous farm community with everyone in the food supply system, all the way down to recipients at food banks, our restaurants, our charitable community, higher ed, K-12, etc. And due to the work of the past 4 years, Kentucky was better positioned than most states when it came to having an influx of people that normally would never visit a food bank or food pantry to keep our shelves stocked. And I'll give you just a few examples of this. Due to our hard work in previous years, we have formal relationships with our food banks as well as major donors, but also our farm community. And we are experiencing a 30% increase in the number of Kentuckians going to food banks with a 40% unemployment rate, which again, I think is just terrible and devastating. And to be quite frank with you, way too high. We can do better than this. We have a lot of folks that may need a little extra help putting food on their table. And as I started this interview off with by saying, we're going to keep you fed. We're not going to complicate COVID-19 or natural disasters or economic collapses or what we see in other countries, armed conflict, which often are compounded with food insecurity. We're not going to let that happen here. And due to the generosity of many, in just the past couple months, here are a few things we've accomplished. We had the largest donation ever, $500,000 by Kentucky Farm Bureau, set aside to specifically buy up products from Kentucky farmers. Kentucky farmers have taken it on the chin these last few months, and so we're buying food that may not have a market to go to our food banks. And this would include 5,000 pounds of Kentucky Proud cheese coming from Western Kentucky, 48,000 hamburgers donated on National Hamburger Day. We've had 10,000 pounds of Purnell's Old Folks Country sausage. It's good, going to our food banks, and as well as some donations outright that didn't cost any money at all. Kentucky's a big poultry state. We had 560,000 eggs donated at no cost. And as we speak right now in the middle of June, we have more and more and more donations in the works, not just on the food side, but also monetary donations. And so I'm very proud of the work that the Hunger Initiative has accomplished the last 4 years, because we developed and built the infrastructure up so that we can withstand the severity of COVID-19. And we were making a lot of progress before this pandemic, but I think this goes to show you that proper planning can mitigate risk down the road.
I think you mentioned a percentage, but I wanted to highlight that just so our audience understands the degree of people impacted. You mentioned the unemployment rate and the numbers of people or percentage of increase of people accessing food through our network of food pantries and the Hunger Initiative and food insecurity initiatives that you've been involved in.
Yeah, statistics oftentimes can tell a very compelling story, but one thing I've learned over the years is that when you start talking about big numbers, it's hard to conceptualize sometimes how severe it is. When Kentucky was doing great, and now a 40% unemployment rate. Now it's getting a little bit better as businesses start back up, but be quite frank with you, we all know that some of these businesses, their doors will be shuttered for good, and we're going to have to start looking for other options. And we're very committed to that at the Kentucky Department of Agriculture. But when you talk about 740,000 Kentuckians were considered food insecure before the pandemic, now we're seeing a 30% increase in the utilization rate of our food banks. This is severe strain on the food supply system, but it also reflects how fragile some of the economic circumstances are in our state. And I want to make one message very clear today. If you are having trouble putting food on your table, or for your family, or for a relative, or for a neighbor, please know there's no shame in asking for help. That's why these food banks exist. That's why these food pantries are there. They're there to be utilized. And I know that sometimes when we're talking about hunger, there's some stigma attached to it. Some people may feel embarrassed that they're unable to provide for their family. And this isn't just an unknown population. Chances are every Kentuckian knows somebody who's had to utilize a food bank. And so I would encourage people to go ahead and make that first step, make that phone call. And it's okay to pick up food. That's why it's there. We're doing it. I was doing it earlier today in Louisville, passing out food for some of our students with a summer feeding program. We want to keep you fed.
So that would really put the numbers at something over 1 million Kentuckians, 700 and some odd thousand all beforehand, and then a 30% increase. Is my math somewhere in the range of being correct? I
think you're right, and it's very hard to know hard data on hunger and food insecurity, but that's based off a recent survey, and then with COVID-19 right now, one's best guess might be the best guess out there, but we already knew that a lot of Kentucky areas were utilizing food banks before the pandemic, and the increase has been quite severe. But I must compliment our food banks and pantries for the work that they've done, because they've been able to easily scale up, and just recently we had 10 school buses donated. We had school buses which were retrofit, so they can be used for summer feeding. We have over 200 refrigerators which have been donated through grants to our food pantries as well. So the need is great, and I would encourage Kentuckians that if you feel comfortable If you want to help out, maybe you can't donate money, but maybe you can donate a little time. And if your food pantry is looking for a little help, I know that they won't turn down some free labor.
I know the last time I talked to the folks involved directly at ours here in Taylor County, they were looking for volunteers at the Taylor County Food Pantry, run by the local ministerial association. Now, Commissioner, you've also been taking some steps during the past few months to help our Kentucky farmers during this pandemic. And what are some of those efforts that you've undertaken and results that have been seen as a result of your efforts to help our farmers?
Well, first and foremost, we got to be clear. There's been severe economic loss in Kentucky agriculture. Let me just tell you a couple of those through numbers. Half of our farms in Kentucky are beef cattle farms, 38,000 of them. If you're in the beef business, right now, since COVID-19, on average, we have lost $200 per head on each steer and cow in Kentucky, and that's big business for us. If you're a grain producer, chances are you've lost a double-digit percentage of the value of the grains you have. Perhaps it was stored in a grain bin, et cetera. It's affecting production decisions in 2020 already. If you're in the hog business, you lost 30 to 40% of the value of your hogs as well. And our poultry farmers have fared a little bit better, but they've been affected as well. And so we were very happy to see that Secretary Sonny Perdue at USDA authorized what we call affectionately CFAP, which is a coronavirus-related relief package for farmers. And this is a program that has really been implemented, funded, and is now being accessed by farmers in a record-breaking time. And for any farmer out there that wants to learn more about CFAP and what financial benefits you might be eligible for, go to farmers.gov. It's a very comprehensive website. There's actually a calculator on there, so you might be able to see what you might qualify for. But ultimately, this program is not run through my office. We simply help answer questions and promote it, but it's run through the Farm Service Agency. So please contact the Farm Service Agency in the county near you, and also check out farmers.gov. And a second thing we've been doing is trying to show appreciation for farmers in general. If there's a silver lining of COVID-19, it's this. For the first time in many Americans' lives, they went to the grocery store and they may have gone to the meat section and saw that shelf is not completely stocked, or perhaps there's a cut of meat that just simply wasn't available. This is an airy feeling. It's an uncomfortable feeling. This is something we associate with other countries sometimes that are developing. And so we've used this as an opportunity to remind consumers that food comes from farms. It doesn't magically show up at a grocery store. And we've had a lot of great op-eds, a lot of great media showcasing Kentucky farmers who, again, are experiencing tremendous loss right now. But we also want to say thank you for what you do, because you really are frontline workers in a different way.
What was the value of the total value of the Kentucky ag economy in 2019?
In 2019, in farm cash receipts, and that means actual sales off farms, that money goes in the back pockets of our farm men and women, was just shy of $6 billion. And so we really have done a good job at almost doubling the size of our farm cash receipts over the past 20 years. And despite the trade disruptions, we are on a path towards recovery. And if you look at the overall economic impact, when you include our grocery stores, the transportation and costs of getting food from the farm gate to your dinner plate, the economic impact in Kentucky is around $45 billion, which goes to show you that people may not realize it, but agriculture is the second biggest employer out of any industry in Kentucky, right behind the manufacturing industry. So
is poultry still the largest segment?
I'm sorry.
Is poultry still the largest segment of the Kentucky ag economy?
That's right. With about $1.3 billion in farm cash receipts, poultry is still number one.
And beef, the Kentucky beef economy, is it the largest east of the Mississippi?
We're the largest beef cattle state, East Mississippi, 8th overall in the nation, which is very impressive when you look at the size of some of these other states on the other side of the river there. But the beef cattle industry is about $1 billion a year going to the back pockets of Kentucky farmers, and that's big business for us. And one thing that we're trying to do in our state is not only raise the cattle here and breed them and feed them, but we're having a serious conversation about increasing the processing capacity of meat in Kentucky as well. We've actually set aside $1 million of tobacco settlement money for any processor that's USDA inspected to expand here in Kentucky. There's just shy about 30 of these, and they're not created equal. Some of these are very small, moms and pops. Some of them are a little bit more sophisticated. But we want to capture hold of this local food movement, which has been amplified during COVID-19. We know for a fact that Kentucky Proud sales are up at grocery stores. CSAs, community supported agriculture baskets, are way up. Grocery store sales of local goods are up as well. That we have an opportunity to increase the meat processing capacity in Kentucky, and we are currently vetting projects as we speak. And I think we're going to see a lot of success with increasing the number of animals that are born here, bred here, fed here, but don't leave the state. They're processed here as well. And I think Kentuckians, when they see that Kentucky Proud sticker on, say, our 100% Kentucky Proud ground beef or lamb right now at Kroger, they're willing to say, I'll pay a couple extra cents if I know it came from a Kentucky farmer.
What's the state of relations between your office and Governor Beshear and his administration? Are there areas that you're working together on, and are there issues that you may disagree on?
You know, I've known Governor Andy Beshear for many years now. We both served together when he's Attorney General. I was Ag Commissioner. And as he's transitioned into his gubernatorial administration, I've offered a helping hand along the way. I want to make sure that we work together to solve issues that affect Kentucky, especially when it comes to ways that we can work together on business development, with economic development, with making Kentucky the ag tech capital of the United States. And I understand he's very busy. He has many different areas of jurisdiction to oversee than I do. But I think that we can do a better job of working with each other. You know, I sent him a letter back in April warning him of some of these meat processing issues. And so I think that we can do a little bit better job working together. In fact, we have an upcoming meeting with the Ag Development Board here in June that I think he's going to be joining us on. I usually chair that, but he'll be chairing it for a few minutes. And I hope that gives us an opportunity to give each other status updates. But I'm a big believer that once the elections are over, that you work together, and I'm committed to doing that in a nonpartisan way. And hey, that's the Kentucky that I know. Kentucky's about working together, doing the right thing.
What policies do you need, would you advocate from the federal level to help Kentucky's troubled ag economy at this point? When I say troubled, mainly because of the pandemic and some trade policy issues perhaps, but in general, what does the federal government need to do to help?
Well, in normal circumstances, we say, just please stay out of our way and just let us do our job. And we're still identifying some rules and regs that simply don't make any sense anymore. But since the pandemic, it's about clear communications. And I must compliment Sonny Perdue and his team at the USDA. They've been in constant contact with us, as well as the other ag commissioners. I'm very happy about that if we have a phone call, say about a waiver for a school system to be able to sell certain types of food, they get back to us, and they're very reasonable about that as well. Secondly, you know, we have federal policymakers that increasingly may not know much about production agriculture. We're lucky in Kentucky that our congressional delegation understands agriculture. That isn't always the case in other states. Right. And so a lot of times we're just asking for the opportunity to be listened to be heard, and enact some common sense. And the last thing is that you mentioned trade. Trade has not disappeared during COVID-19. We're advancing the ball in Japan. We're starting to rewrite our trade agreement with the United Kingdom. These are things that are ongoing. They may be virtual, but my office is assisting them. And for me, I'm very pleased to let you know that I serve as vice president of all the ag commissioners in America. And yes, just in a couple months, I'll be the national president. So I'm going to be engaged on trade and other federal policy ag-related decisions here in the near future. And so I'm proud that Kentucky's going to have a seat at the table.
The hemp industry has encountered some bumps this past year with particularly with the bankruptcy of a couple of processing companies here in Kentucky. What's the prospect in 2020 and beyond for the hemp industry, and what initiatives do you see coming in that area? I know that has been an area of emphasis during your tenure.
When we decided to bring back industrial hemp, we knew it may not be a crop for everybody, and we know that it's a crop that has a lot of risk associated with it. And so when it was legalized, and in 2019 we had a breakout year, we knew that there was going to be some market correction towards the end of the year. And I am convinced, despite a little bit of turbulence in 2019 and some issues we're dealing with today, and look, I'm fighting for the farmers, is that we're going to have a long-term hemp market in Kentucky that will succeed. And for 2020, we'll have roughly about the same number of farmers with a license in 2020 as we did in 2019. There's an influx of people that have been growing it for the first time. But we recommend the same piece of advice that we've been telling people for 5 years now since I've been ag commissioners, is be careful, be cautious, assess your own risk at your farm level. Don't invest more than you're willing to lose, and be careful. But we think the acreage will be down this year, but the enthusiasm is still there. And one of the cool things is that we still have more hemp companies today than we did a year ago, despite some financial issues. And we have some hemp companies that are really taking some bold steps on the fiber side, which is the more historical use of hemp. And so I'm excited to see what these innovations may bring us. But again, hemp may not be a crop for everyone. Please assess your own risk, and good luck.
We're down to about a minute. Commissioner, any other issues or initiatives you would like to comment on in closing?
Well, in closing, I just want to say that if you want to make a commitment to help strengthen agriculture in Kentucky, go visit a farmer's market on a Saturday morning. Make a commitment to maybe visit a farmer's website, many of which are brand new, and say, I want to buy local, and let's not make this a fad. Let's make this something that's more permanent. And I think that by the end of this year, you're going to see more dialogue when it comes to not only meat processing, but also having a greater appreciation for where food comes from. You know, in World War II, half of all of our food in America came from backyard gardens. And whether you're 8 or 80, you can go to your extension office today and start what we call the Kentucky Proud Victory Garden program. So if you have a windowsill with one pot or some backyard ground that you want to till up, do what the greatest generation did. Participate in a Victory Garden program, go to your extension service, and let's have fun, and let's grow our future together.
Commissioner, thank you so much for your time. We wish you Godspeed. Keep up the good effort, and we will look forward to interviewing you again very soon. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And I like you, are going to miss the best July 4th parade in Kentucky, and that's right there in Campbellsville. And I'm going to miss it this year, but I'll be back next year.
Well, we look forward to 2021. That is one of the victims of COVID-19, unfortunately. This is John Chowning for Dialogue on Public Issues with Kentucky Commissioner of Agriculture Ron Quarles as our guest. Thank you for watching.